The famous story of the Phantom of the Opera was initially published in a series of articles in Le Galet and then in a 1911 book titled Le Fantôme de l'Opéra, written by a French journalist, Gastón Leroux. When the story was first published, it failed to gain popularity, and the edition soon went out of print. What is not widely known is that the story is based on true events. Monsieur Leroux specialized in investigative journalism, and it is through his research that the story came to light. In fact, others who have researched this subject believe, with just a few exceptions, that the story has several elements that are undoubtedly true. The opera house in the story was based on the real Opera Garnier in Paris. The Opera Garnier does indeed have underground tunnels, and it also has an underground lake. Leroux used this setting in several dramatic scenes in his story. On January 13, 1862, the first pouring of the concrete began, and an unexpected problem came to light. The Palais Garnier needed a much deeper basement than any other Paris theatre, because of the need to store props, costumes and other items from previous and current productions. The problem was the groundwater. The levels were much higher than anticipated, and there was no way of sealing the water's source. They had hit an arm of the Seine running below ground, and no matter how hard they tried to pump out the water, it kept rushing back. Rather than abandon the location and the project, Charles Garnier adjusted his designs to divert the water into cisterns or tanks, creating a sort of artificial lake. The lake remains to this day beneath the building. In it swims a resident white catfish, which the opera staff affectionately feed. Parisian firefighters also use the lake to practice swimming in the dark. It is recorded in the history of Opera Garnier that the counterweight of a large candle-lit crystal chandelier came loose and crashed through the ceiling, setting the building on fire and killing a woman. The woman's name was Madame Chaumet, a concierge. On May 21, 1896, the issue of Le Matin, a newspaper where Gastón Leroux was moonlighting as the senior courtroom reporter, a headline ran hot off the press, which read, 500 kilos on a concierge's head. This wasn't the actual truth. As we now know, it was the counterweight weighing less than 10 kilos that fell into the audience. Leroux used a falling light in his story as a distraction so his phantom could kidnap Christine. The actual phantom is based upon a man named Eric, who was born in a small village in Normandy near Rouen. He was born with a horribly disfigured face, so his parents abandoned him when he was 8. A circus owner saw promise in this poor child and took him in. For the next 7 years, the circus became his new family, and he was touted as one of their main attractions. Whilst travelling with the circus, he escaped in Persia and worked as an entertainer for the Shah. Later he worked as an architect's assistant, and he designed and built several harems, which gave him a greater understanding of architectural design. Now confident, he returned to France. He so impressed Charles Garnier that he was signed on as one of the contractors that built the new opera house, the Opera Garnier. He worked 12-hour days until the project was completed. The romance between the Phantom and Christine in the story is just a fantasy, but it is believed that Leroux based both characters on real people. In addition, the basic idea for the novel evolved from an actual rumor about the Opera Garnier that made the rounds during Leroux's time. The rumor claimed a deformed man lived beneath the opera house and was committing all sorts of crimes, and that the man's name was Eric. This Eric had asked permission to live underneath the incredible structure and hadn't been seen since. This tale became the basis for the character and story of the Phantom. Just as in the story, The rumoured real-life Eric had his own personal Box 5 at the Opera House. He even had a hollow column built next to it, which was his secret entrance and exit. Here he could come and go without being seen. The Phantom makes a request that Box 5 be kept empty at all times for his personal use. It remains empty throughout each and every performance at the Opera Garnier. He also demands a salary of 20,000 francs to be paid to him each month. The new owners laugh at this letter and eventually rent out Box 5. They try to see the man in Box 5 but only catch a glimpse of a sinister shadow. As the Phantom's wishes are disregarded, the curse becomes more and more active. The fictional innocent of our novel was named Christine Dieu, and strangely enough she resembles a real-life soprano who went by the stage name of Christine Nielsen, her real name being Christina Jonasdotter, famous for her performances in the operas Hamlet and Faust. Nielsen and Dieu have much in common. Both were Swedish with blonde hair and blue eyes. Both came from a poor family, forced to leave their homes at a young age to survive, and eventually taken in by a character named Valerius in Gothenburg. Most importantly, both eventually ended up in Paris, although Nielsen never actually got to sing at the Opera Garnier, mysteriously cancelling her performance before the opera's inauguration at the last minute. There are two references to a room with phonographic records in The Phantom of the Opera, in the prologue and the epilogue, including this one. Some of you may remember that latterly workmen digging in the vaults of the Opera House, where phonographic recordings of singers' performances were to be buried, came upon a corpse. I had immediate proof that this was the body of the Phantom of the Opera. In 1907, a time capsule with 24 phonographic recordings of opera singers of the time was buried in the cellar of the Opera House Garnier. These recordings were made by Alfred Clark, who owned a French branch of the gramophone company, predecessors of today's EMI Music. At the time the room was sealed, it turned out Aristide Briand, then France's Minister of Public Instruction, formally registered Alfred Clark's wish that the room would not be opened for 100 years, in order to show the people of that era what had been the state of talking machines and what were the voices of the principal singers of our times. Alfred Clark was an American, a former associate of Thomas Edison, and a pioneer in the transition of voice recording from wax cylinder to discs. The actual urns that contained the discs remained unopened for 100 years. Since 1907 the room had been sealed up and forgotten. The time capsule was rediscovered in 1989 when workmen installing air conditioning discovered the room once more. At that point, Jean-Jacques Beclier, the opera's technical supervisor, ordered the room to be opened and discovered damage to 2 of the 4 urns. The undamaged urns were then transferred to the custody of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France and were finally opened in 2008. Leroux claimed that the body of Eric was found during the process of digging out the vaults in 1907. While that is not believed to be true, some skeletons were being unearthed around that time. Leroux was writing Phantom of the Opera between 1907 and 1910, and these poor souls were thought to be victims of the Commune, which may have used the cellars of the Opera House Garnier to hold prisoners. The Commune was a revolutionary utopian government that seized Paris for 2 months in 1871. The Opera House served as a shelter and storehouse for food and ammunition during the Prussian siege of Paris, which ended 2 months before the reign of the Commune. Corpses kept turning up at various new urban development sites around the time that Leroux was writing The Phantom of the Opera. Between the 21st and 28th of May 1871, an estimated 25,000 Parisians met a violent end. So, did the Phantom exist? That's up to you to decide, my dear friends. Pierre Vidal, curator of the museum at the Palais Garnier, claims that the staff of the Opera House blame the Phantom whenever something inexplicable happens. Leroux himself insisted that the Phantom was real, openly proclaiming it after the film version came out in 1926. He even vowed it on his deathbed. Mireille Ribière, whose translation of the book was released in 2009, insists that the Phantom is most certainly made up. He explains that Leroux was a flamboyant, larger-than-life character who reacted as anyone would, with all of Hollywood asking if the Phantom was real. If your make-believe has been so successful that people ask the question, you are not going to destroy the illusion. If people wanted to believe that he had existed, he was not going to disappoint them. That's how I see it. But having said that, perhaps he really believed it. Well, my friends, I hope you enjoyed that presentation. A little something different. Have any of you been to the Opera Palais Garnier in Paris? Let me know if you have. I haven't been there. I've been to Paris, but I never went there. But it certainly looks very impressive, and if I do get to Paris again, I'm going to go and visit. Not that I expect to see the ghost of the Phantom, but just to look at the beautiful decoration. What a fabulous looking building. Yes, when I was a child, my mother went for a spate of taking me to see West End stage productions in London. It was fantastic. Went to see The King and I with the long dead Yul Brynner, and also Mousetrap, and Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Any of you remember those? Yeah, it was a very exciting time. Never got to see Phantom of the Opera though. Odette went to see it in Vienna. I envy her. She said it was at a beautiful theatre too. But one day I will get to see it. So, let me know in your comments what you think about the Phantom of the Opera. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, when I was a child, getting transported around London in a London taxi, it was all magical. It really was fantastic. I was in awe. You know, we had come over from Australia. My sisters were already living in London, and it was just fantastic. And then I went back in 1994. I was backpacking around Europe. I hired a car. I was staying in Earl's Court, and it was just a pain in the butt. It really was, trying to drive around London. That was the days before GPS too. Getting lost and just so much traffic. It somehow lost its magical appeal. But I guess that's life, isn't it? When you're a child, it's just sprinkled with magic dust, and as you get older, that wears off. But I'll never forget those days, especially the West End performances. It was a fantastic time. I just want to give a few people a shout out. The first shout out is to the lovely Jen, who is very active on my Discord, and I received a surprise parcel in my postbox, and it was accompanied by this card, and thank you so much, Jen, for your lovely words. Thank you so much, and wait till you see what she's made for me. She has done this by hand, by the way. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic? My ObsoleteOddity logo. And I'm going to have that framed. I'll show you it. Once I've had it framed, I'll pop it up on the screen at the end of a video again. I'm really chuffed with that. I think that's fantastic. Jen has said that she has a lot of time on her hands, and if anybody else would like one, she's willing to do it. You can discuss with her, you know, how much she charges for that. But I want to thank you so much, Jen. I'm really, really so pleased with that item. Even Odette, she loved it. So thank you again. Very, very thoughtful of you. If any of you are interested in having one of these made by Jen, you can just leave me a comment and I will pass on your details to Jen and you can get in touch with each other. A big shout out to two of my blessed followers who have bought my merchandise and are proudly displaying it. Apologies, I have forgotten your names. You know, sometimes you'll send me these messages and I don't get around to giving you the shout out like a month later or more, and I do profoundly apologize that I have forgotten your names. My brain has got so much to take in and to try and hold that I can't remember everything. But thank you so much. You know who you are, and if you're watching this, give me a clue to it in the comment section, and I will respond gladly. Thank you so much. Right, one more shout out, and I'm going to show you some new merchandise, by the way, so stay tuned for that. Also something amusing for you at the end. I don't know, some of you may remember as a side question on one of my competitions, on one of my giveaways on Patreon, I asked someone to make suggestions what would be a good design for a t-shirt, a mug, and someone mentioned Marceline mannequin. So I've come up with a design here. That's Marceline, wild-eyed and stalking through the lamplit streets. So, yeah, I might even get one myself. Good old Marceline, eh? She sort of livens up the junk store tours. And Amy has come up with this design, Oddie's time slips. I love that. The old 1930s car interior with an Oddie cushion and my top hat placed strategically on the seat. And in the window you can see the whirl of the time machine. I really, really like that. Amy has done a fantastic job. As usual, she comes up with some great designs. And check out her website. I'm going to introduce it right now. And Amy not only designed the Oddie's time slips, but she also designed Paradise in the Afterlife and Silence of the Odd, which are appearing on the screen right now. And she has her own Zazzle online store. You might want to go and check it out. I will leave the link in the description. Go and check it out. There's some great products there. She's got some fabulous ideas for t-shirts and for mugs, smartphone cases. I love this one. COVID era, making friends. There's a lady. She's knitting her friends. And I don't think that's such a bad idea, considering the times we're living in. And I want to thank you, Amy, for your great designs over the years. There's been some fantastic ones. And I love the Oddie's time slips. It's really, really good. I might get one myself, actually. Really appreciate it, Amy. Get over there, my viewers. Check out her site. There might be something that's perfect for you. Okie dokie. Any of you wondering who that is on the screen? That was the legendary Kenny Everett playing the part of Marcel Wave, the flamboyant Frenchman. It's a perfect introduction to... It's not really a blooper, it's just a part that I actually edited and cut out. Do you remember this part of the video where I'm discussing the finding of the phonographic records? Some of you may remember that latterly, workmen digging in the vaults of the opera house. You know what I mean? Well, I attempted to do it with a French accent with quite amusing results. I think it sounds a bit French, probably smattered with a bit of Czechoslovakian. Listen for yourself. I think it sounds quite funny. Anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you, and see you soon, my dear friends. Thank you for watching and listening. Bye-bye. Some of you may remember that latterly workmen digging in the vaults of the opera house where phonographic recordings of singers' performances were to be buried came upon a corpse. I had immediate proof that this was the body of the Phantom of the Opera.